Let's take a look at Jarvis Landry's Twitter, and we will see. Reality behind all this is I came back to play into play in the best shape of my life. Got hurt in week 2, high-grade MCL sprain, partial quad tear, bone bruise. Came back way too early. Never heard me mention anything about it. That is all very true. Media availability didn't happen because I was focused on getting in the field as healthy as possible during the week. Strategic plan set aside that I followed. Put the ball in Cleveland's court by telling them I would like to stay. But if not, then have to put the ball in Cleveland's court. I'm confident enough in myself to be better, healthier this year, and moving forward to help do my part winning a championship elsewhere. With that, let's welcome in Tim Bielik, reporter for the Plain Dealer as well as cleveland.com. And Tim, it was pretty evident that Jarvis Landry was never healthy. Just your thoughts on what has hit social media from Jarvis today.
Yeah, I think it's become kind of a pattern when it comes to the Browns this past season of guys, playing through injuries and then becoming worse. I mean, there's Baker with the shoulder, Jedrick Wills with the ankle, now Jarvis Landry with what happened with what he revealed this morning, the MCL. Obviously, it shows. I mean, I'll give the Browns players credit for fighting through those injuries, but it was a pattern, I think, that just showed that those guys were clearly injured. Maybe they were rushed too early, and it's odd that kind of happened after a training camp in which, Kevin Stefanski and company were very conservative about holding guys out. If there was any tweak, any nick or whatever, they would hold them out of practice for a few days. And then in the season, they were willing to let guys play through injury as opposed to sitting them, getting them the proper rest they needed, and getting healthy for the long run. So in regards to Jarvis Landry, obviously he's never really played through injury. This is like basically the first time in his career he's dealt with any sort of significant injury that held him back for multiple games. He had been very reliable, earlier in his first couple of years of the Browns. Obviously, he was a key part of the team, and you could just tell all season that he just wasn't right. He just wasn't himself. And I think, that injury revelation, I think, says a lot about it. And I mean, you do have to give him, Baker, and Jedrick credit for playing through the injuries, but at some point, it becomes a problem. And when you're playing several limited players on top of all the other problems the Browns had on offense, it's going to add up and it's going to lead to a lot of problems. And, the product on the field suffering as we saw towards the end of the season.
Is it a concern that, clearly, and I get it, football, you play through injuries, but there has to be a time where you say, man, no, you're not near healthy enough to play. You saw it with Baker. You mentioned Jedrick. You also Jarvis Landry. Those are three guys that are important, especially the passing game. Is that a concern? Is that something that the Browns have to look at internally, do you think?
I think that's got to be part of the growth of Kevin Stefanski going into year 3. What football player is going to say that they're not healthy enough to go? I mean, every football player is very tough. I mean, you got to be tough to play football. It is a collision sport where guys are flying into each other at 20 plus miles an hour at times at full speed. So of course they're going to be tough. Of course they're going to play through anything. But, as a coach, as an organization, at some point you got to protect the player from himself. And I think that was kind of the thing with Baker. And you saw how that just continued to add up for him as the season went on and on and on. And, his play deteriorated more and more. Jedrick Wills, I mean, he left 3 consecutive games in the middle of the game because he couldn't keep going on that ankle and he probably needed a few weeks off the ankle to rest it. And Jarvis Landry, I mean, him being banged up obviously wasn't good. We saw just how, he lost the step because of those injuries. And so many guys got hurt. It just wasn't good injury management on the part of the Browns. And that's something I think that Kevin Stefanski, hopefully for the Browns, will be able to learn and go into the season understanding that sometimes he has to be the bad guy and tell guys, no, you can't play. You're not going to be able to help this team. And that there's if you're injured, what'd be better, 10 games of a guy who's maybe 60% or 6 games of that same guy who's 100%? At the end of the season when those games can really matter more. So that's got to be something the Browns really look at and improve those things. I think John Johnson said something similar in the at the end of the season, talking about how they really need to kind of address those sort of things as far as health and sports science are concerned.
Yeah, and I've been saying pretty much all off season, Jarvis played on a leg and a half. He was never, since week 2, he was never anywhere near 100%.